Mother-in-law is trying to cancel our wedding. Hey everyone. My fiancé left a post on relationships yesterday. Me, 34 male, with my fiancée, 33 female, together 18 months, engaged for 12 months. Mother is causing us problems for weeks from our wedding, and there were a few recommendations that I join and ask this community for support. I know you can't cross-post, and the mods have since deleted the entry, but I will repost it in the comments, so you have the background. I'm splitting this up into 3 parts. Why I feel how I do, the events, and where we are today. I hope that's okay. I just don't want a huge wall of text bombarding everyone. I'm putting them all up at once, so it'll make sense immediately and not over a period of time. I'm going to be honest. I have hung out in this community before, but silently on my main account. I never posted or commented as I was so frightened it would get back to my mother-in-law or my fiancé. My brother-in-law and fiancé are both redditors, and I think the situation was identifying enough that they'd both recognize me. Also, I was extremely unsure of myself and spent a lot of time thinking this was in my own head. The advice from relationships, whilst harsh, was very eye-opening. I think the issue I've had for the past 18 months is that my mother-in-law's behavior is insidious. So many times, I was left thinking she couldn't have meant to say it that way, or struggling to actually pin down why I felt so attacked. She would make barbed comments that would go straight over my fiancé's head, but were so bizarrely scattered I couldn't call her out for them. I doubted myself. I doubted how I was feeling. I thought it was in my head. That I was crazy. That I was looking for reasons to dislike her for some nebulous reason I myself couldn't fathom. My fiancé said in his post that it was "women's things" and was, on the face of it, understandably lynched by commenters. I'd like to clear up that he was using my explanation for it whenever I tried telling him about his mother's comments and how he missed them. The only way I could explain it was that she was using subtle tactics that are picked up by women and not men. Honestly, I was struggling to find any kind of way to explain how I was feeling. Mother-in-law has a habit of playing both victim and martyr. This makes it absolutely impossible to have a reasonable discussion with her. Any kind of criticism, real or perceived, is taken so personally and invokes such tidal waves of self-pity and attack. It's not worth it. Whenever she relays an incident, a conversation, even a very basic interaction, she was the victim in it. It's so utterly exhausting to be around. Mother-in-law triangulates when I don't respond in ways she finds acceptable, which is often as I keep my relationship with her low contact and will only answer emails/texts that I choose to. She will start ramping up how wonderful my brother-in-law's girlfriend is. My brother-in-law's girlfriend is genuinely wonderful, but mother-in-law uses it like a battering ram. It's hard to describe without sounding pathetic, but every time I try and do something nice for mother-in-law, she will immediately ignore it and espouse how GF did something so thoughtful and amazing and how much she loves her. I'm constantly being devalued and discarded, which makes me not want to be around her, as it's incredibly hurtful. Nothing I do is ever good enough. I think mother-in-law was hoping I'd end up resenting GF or engage in a battle of I'm the best daughter-in-law, but it had the opposite effect. I really like GF, and I don't want to be anywhere near mother-in-law. The ex was a huge issue. My fiancé's previous relationship was not great. I'm not going into details because it's irrelevant, and I wasn't there. But my mother-in-law wouldn't let it drop. Every single conversation I had with mother-in-law involved the ex in some way. I know that sounds like I'm exaggerating, and I truly wish I was, because it's been a horrible situation to find myself in. The most basic comments will trigger a 30-minute conversation about the ex. I'd say how lovely dinner was, and MILF would say I used to cook for X, and she never appreciated it. I did so much for her, and she threw it back at us. I would mention that the garden looked nice, and would be met with, X used to sit in the garden. She never helped out with it. She wouldn't do a thing. She ripped apart my family. X ruined my family. How do you even respond to that? I could never be part of the family, could never feel accepted, because every time I tried to engage I was bombarded by talk of his ex. Mother-in-law never made an effort to just get to know me. I tried, God knows I tried so hard, but even that was met with X used to confide in me. She told me this, and I always thought it was so sad, but she threw it back at us. I was very careful to not confide or give details about my life, because I knew one day I would be on the receiving end of all this. For 18 months, I was trapped in this loop of am I crazy, and desperately trying to justify mother-in-law's behavior, making excuses, and quietly confiding to my fiancé the things that were upsetting me. She has conditioned the household, and it's frightening to witness. Everyone raised under her roof has been conditioned from birth to consider mother-in-law's feelings and comfort paramount, at the detriment of their own mother-in-law, isn't allowed to feel bad, or be challenged, or have her behavior questioned, because if you do, God help you. She has trained the family to scurry around, fighting her battles, soothing her emotions. It's distressing to watch. Which brings us to the argument, and what has now spiraled into an utter mess. I noticed that fiancé would never listen to my feelings. It was hard, because I couldn't find the words to explain why I was so upset, as most of the issues were insidious. But when I had concrete evidence, he would make excuses. She doesn't mean it like that. You're being sensitive. I'm sure there's an explanation. It was ultimate gaslighting. When I asked for at least some form of validation, he would say he doesn't want to be in the middle, and it's up to me to fight my battles with mother-in-law. I couldn't do it though. I'm not equipped to battle someone I don't understand. Someone who has spent 18 months low-key bullying the hell out of me. I was cowed by it all, and stuck in some crazy dynamic I couldn't unravel. Mother-in-law has a habit of creating drama and then ghosting. She sends war and peace emails detailing her daily woes, truly depressing stuff, and lays an incredible amount of guilt on my doorstep. Her last email to me was saying how she knows I like to spend my weekends doing my own thing, but I should make time for them. So I emailed back saying I agree, and would Saturday work. She never responded. I guess it's more convenient for her to play the marginalized victim pushed out by her doll than actually, meet up and have a nice lunch. The following Saturday, when we were supposed to meet, I had enough. I went nuclear. I know I could have handled it a lot better, but I was finished with it all. My teenage daughter confided in my mum that she had witnessed this going on and was disgusted with my fiancé for allowing it. Her very solid, very beautiful relationship with her stepfather was on the verge of disintegrating. My fiancé had popped in to see his parents and ended up staying all afternoon. My mother-in-law had again successfully frozen me out and got what she wanted, my fiancé on his own, and me as the bad guy who avoids her, and my fiancé was enabling it. He knew the situation. He knew I was hurt by my mother-in-law freezing me out yet again, but went along and sat there all afternoon playing happy families without so much as mentioning the fact she'd ignored me. I text him saying either he gets in the middle and sorts it out, or the wedding is off. He called my bluff. So I called the wedding off. Told him straight that I couldn't marry into this. His mother is a narcissistic bully who has systematically bullied and isolated me for 18 months. I'll give him his due. He stepped up. He hadn't realized how bad it had got. That was partially my fault, as I had struggled to efficiently communicate how awful things had become. Partially his fault for burying his head in the sand. And he sat his parents down and explained that I was hurt. They acted shocked. Said they had never intended for me to feel this way, and fiancé suggested we all meet up on neutral grounds and start again. I was fine with this. I didn't want to cut them out. I want my fiancé to have a good relationship with his parents, and with the wedding just 5 weeks away we needed to be on the same page. I felt content and confident with this outcome. The neutral ground thing. I had been very clear with fiancé that I wasn't going to the in-laws' house again. Whenever I see them outside the house they're genuinely okay. The moment I step foot in their house, the attacks start. I also want to make it clear that I have said several times to my fiancé that he should have a relationship with his parents and keep me out of it. Mother-in-law won't allow that. She has to fully control everyone. I can't just exist as a background player. She wants us all over there every single Sunday for the entire day, playing the Waltons. P.S. I respectfully ask that people please try not to attack my fiancé or criticize how he's handled things in the past. He's been conditioned and trained to always protect his mum. He's fighting against a mechanism that has been in him since birth. He's standing up for me now when it really matters, and he's being amazing. He is the man I'm marrying in 4 weeks, and I'm so proud and awed by his strength in this moment. Mother-in-law tried to ruin my wedding, yelled at me, and so until 1 AM morning of the event. So as the title would indicate, I just got married, yay. The wedding was beautiful, and so was the honeymoon. All this was almost ruined by my nightmarish mother-in-law. Some fellow redditors recommended I post here, if anything, to get the whole incident off my chest. This might be a bit long. My so and I have been engaged for over a year. The engagement came with lots of drama. First, and this comes into play later, my so's parents are divorced. His sister no longer speaks to their dad, but she let us know that it was our decision on whether to invite him or not. No hard feelings either way. So we invited both sister-in-law and father-in-law to the wedding with the intent to sit them at different tables to minimize interaction. However, when we told sister-in-law that her father was invited, she was furious. Guilt-tripped my so pretty hard, called him a co-abuser. We had never heard her claim abuse prior to this, and said she wouldn't be coming to the wedding. Fast forward to Thanksgiving. Sister-in-law and her boyfriend ignore us at the family gathering at mother-in-law's house. Won't say a word to us or look at us. We bring up that we are uncomfortable with mother-in-law and she says sister-in-law is just hurt and we need to focus on how happy JusynoMIL is to have us there. We leave early because it's pretty freaking uncomfortable to be ignored by a full third of the people there. Second, mother-in-law does not like me. Part of this, I think, is due to her not wanting to let go of her son. But I think the majority is because I have severe depression and anxiety. Both have gotten a ton better in the past 2 years, in no small part due to the wonderful support of my so. But she hasn't forgotten my suicide attempt from a few years ago, and since then has viewed me as crazy. But that's a different story. Since then, she has tried to convince my so to break up with me, going so far to say that I might go off my birth control in order to control and manipulate him. It's been rough, to say the least. Anyways, wedding comes around, and she has been absent from most of the planning stages. But she and her husband show up to the rehearsal dinner and then promise to be available the next afternoon to help us decorate the reception hall. That afternoon rolls around, they don't show up. At 2 hours late I text her, and at 3 hours late my so calls her, no response. There are just no shows. Finally, late that night, the night before the wedding, we hear from them. Mother-in-law had been wedding dress shopping with so's sister the whole day. The sister who will not speak to us. We didn't even know she was engaged, but apparently she is getting married this summer. Side note, she has been dating her boyfriend for years and we are pretty sure scheduled the wedding this summer to one-up us. Then her phone died. She didn't have a charger, supposedly. And to top it off, they went to a different city to pick the dress up when it wasn't available locally, a city 3 hours away one way. She completely abandoned her son the day before his wedding to focus on her daughter's wedding shopping. Needless to say, so and I are irate. On top of all this, we actually needed her to sign some paperwork for the church, so we could actually get married the next day, and she knew that. We go to see her, and talk about why this is so upsetting, and bring the paperwork, and all hell breaks loose. We fought for hours. She kept trying to deflect the conversation by saying this is about me and my son, not you. So be sad Pandamanda. I pointed out that me and so are going to be married in less than 24 hours. So it's definitely about both of us now, and she looked absolutely shocked and called me psychotic. It's so hard to type out everything that was said. She got so manipulative. Insulted me, brought my mental health into it, insisted that I was controlling so, referenced the suicide attempt as evidence. It was a low blow. It hurt. I was tired. And she never once saw how what she did that day was questionable at best. Kept painting herself as the loving, caring mom who raised her kids, and myself as the insane fiance hell-bent on turning so against her. She even brought my family into it, and she had only just met them the day before. I had to make sure my family and friends kept her away from me at the reception. But fortunately so, and I were able to enjoy ourselves. I have no doubt that his sister wanted to take something away from our big day, and whether his mom realizes that or not, she didn't have our best interests at heart that day. I don't know how I'm going to face her on holidays, or ever. This was never how I wanted to spend the night before my wedding. I wish she didn't know about the suicide attempt, so that she couldn't use it against me like this. But part of me wonders if she would just find something else instead. TLDR, mother-in-law spends day before our wedding with her other daughter wedding dress shopping instead of helping us, then argues with us until 1 AM about why I'm the bad person here. Mil and our wedding. So after our short engagement we began the wedding planning process. I immediately knew what color I wanted my girls to be in. Dear husband was on the fence as to what color would match best with it. We settled on coral and navy blue. Trying to be the nice still, so stupid. I wanted to include my mil in the wedding planning, since we were in my home state and my mom would be helping as well. I didn't want her to feel left out. Because we didn't see her much, I didn't get as much of her crazy, but who boy did I unlock it. Give them an inch and they take a mile, am I right? She demanded my sister-in-laws be in my line. I asked dear husband if he was okay with this, and he said it was fine. He added my little brother to his side, to be fair. Oh no. Mother-in-law said he didn't need to have my little brother on his side. He's not family. He barely knows my brother. My little brother wasn't attractive enough. He was 15 with acne. Dear husband reminded her that all these points that she had against him, I could potentially have against my sister-in-laws being in the wedding party. She was appalled. How could he even say that? I'd love my sills, and I'd be honored to have them in my line. He just didn't understand. It's a girl thing. He stood firm and told her it wasn't her choice who we had in our lines. It was ours. And if I didn't want my sister-in-laws in the line they wouldn't be. They were. I do like my sister-in-laws for the most part. Sister-in-law 1 has her moments where she's just like her mother. We picked out our venue. It was gorgeous. They were willing to decorate, cater, set everything up, tear it all down, provide flowers, etc. All for the low price of $5,000. Mother-in-law just couldn't imagine that her baby boy was going to drop that much money on a room. She'd asked around and found a much cheaper option, only $500. Her family could decorate, since aunt-in-law is a professional wedding decorator. They'll make all the food. Grandmother-in-law, father-in-law's mom, works in a school cafeteria, so she knows how to cook. She honestly talked it up so much, and we were on a tight budget that we agreed. The venue was so bad. It was a former concert hall that they did up for weddings and events. Honestly not worth $500. Ale, for all of her great qualities, did a shit job decorating. We of course didn't know until our wedding day. I cried. I still get upset knowing my wedding day looked that way, especially because I've been to our venue of choice for weddings since. My best friend got married there, and it was gorgeous. I wish I'd just bit the bullet and spent the money, especially since my parents were willing to put $2,500 towards it. Grandmother-in-law did indeed know how to cook, but mother-in-law couldn't let her take all the credit, so she told grandmother-in-law that we'd decided we would have a dessert bar, so she didn't need to cook. They went to Costco and bought mass amounts of cream puffs, eclairs, tubs of ice cream, chocolate sauce, caramel sauce, a dozen different cookies, donuts. They bought probably 2 liters of Pepsi, 7-Up, Dr. Pepper, and Mount Dew. She took some of the sherbet ice cream and 7-Up and made this weird sherbet float type drink. It looked weird, tasted weird, and hardly anyone drank it. Thankfully my mom made some of her awesome pasta salad. Mother-in-law tried to say neither of us wanted it, but mom shut that shit down with a stuck mama specifically requested this, so I don't know where you're getting your information but it's wrong. And my aunt ran out and got rolls, condiments, and meat so people could make their own sandwiches. She expected us to reimburse her for all she spent, so she stuck her receipt in the gift pile. That classy. And when we found it we called her and told her in no way shape or form was she getting paid for shit we didn't want or eat. She screamed and yelled at us that we were spoiled ungrateful people. My color just wouldn't work for sister-in-law 1. She hates pink and any sort of shade of it. It doesn't match her skin tone and makes her look red and blotchy. I wouldn't change it because it's my favorite color. It looked great with dear husband's navy. Then mother-in-law said well sister-in-law 1 will just wear a navy dress. Since she's dear husband's sister she'll have his color. We can add maybe a pink sash. I told her if she's wearing navy then she'd be on dear husband's side, because on my side there were coral dresses with small navy sash/belts. She called dear husband crying about how awful I was being, not letting her help at all. I wasn't trying to accommodate sister-in-law 1. She doesn't like the strapless dress I picked. She can't afford it. Blah blah blah. Dear husband told her sister-in-law 1 didn't have to have the strapless dress. The dress could be altered to have whatever types of straps she wanted, and if she had a problem with the color she didn't have to be in the line. It wasn't her choice of what color she got to wear. She either wore the coral or she didn't get to be in the line. Mother-in-law then called me bawling, begging me to change the color to something more suiting for sister-in-law 1's skin tone. That sister-in-law 1 would be so embarrassed if she's red and splotchy in wedding pictures. So 1 can't afford the dress. So I told mother-in-law I'd help pay for her dress. It was $90. I paid $50, but that it was going to be coral, and she was going to have to deal with it. That annoyed mother-in-law off to no end. Of course. The dress gets bought, and sister-in-law 1 leaves it on her couch. Her dogs got to it, tore it to shreds, so she needed to buy a new one 3 days before the wedding. They didn't have any coral available in her size, so she got a dark navy blue dress. It looked almost identical to mother-in-law's mother of the groom dress. I'd had months of arguing over this, so I finally just gave in and let her wear the damn navy dress, but I made her stand at the end of the line, which highly offended mother-in-law because she was older, so she should been further up. Dear husband walked mother-in-law down the aisle, then came back and walked my mom down the aisle. Mother-in-law wailed at the reception how dear husband is her son and he shouldn't have been walking my mom down. It was such an insult to her, a slap in her face. After all these years of raising dear husband and he just does that to her. One of his friends said well she's his mom now too, his mom-in-law. I think it was a cute and respectful thing to do. Well, Mil started screaming at this friend that she is his only mother and will always be his only mother. Don't you dare ever say anyone else is ever his mother. She made a giant ass of herself in front of my entire family and all our friends. We took a break from pictures to eat. Apparently this was the time mother-in-law decided she wanted family pictures of her family and dear husband. He said he'd do it after we'd eaten, and she cried because she wanted pictures right now, and he had to do it right then before everyone got busy again. So we put our food down and got pictures. She tried to tell me I could sit and eat and it was just going to be her family and dear husband, but the photographer said no, it'll include the bride too. I can do 1 or 2 of just your family, but then she'll be in the rest. She was all over him for pictures, wrapping her arms around him, rubbing his chest and back. It was super weird. When we took pictures he held my hand. She tried to grab for his other one, and he swatted it away, so she linked arms with him. She had one of these smiles in every picture. He admitted later that his mom had made him super uncomfortable during their pictures, and you can definitely see it on his and everyone else in the family's face. She placed bets on how long dear husband and I would be married. This was my favorite to find out. After my honeymoon my best friend and I were talking about the shit show that was my wedding. She said it honestly wasn't too bad from what she saw on her end, except mother-in-law was making wagers with her family and our friends about how long we'd last. She tried to play it off as this hilarious joke when people called her out on it. What, it's a joke. It's just in good fun. But if you were to place a bet, what would it be? She said we'd be married a year maximum before one of us became too much to handle and we divorced. Pretty much everyone, save for her mom and her sisters, started ignoring her after that and telling her she was being flat out rude. A couple guests wanted to kick her out, but they didn't. She then complained to us how rude everyone was to her because she was an outsider to the state. She complained about the alcohol. She comes from a state where there is like a lot of alcohol per liter or however that's measured, and we were married in a state that is significantly less. She was so upset, complained the whole time about this piss water with a touch of alcohol and how awful my home state was. One of my friends said I thought the only people that cared about alcohol content were alcoholics, and gave her a nice long stare until mother-in-law got uncomfortable and stopped talking about it. For all the shit that it was though, it was worth it. I definitely changed things if I could go back, but in the end I'm just glad he's mine.